Welcome to Discipleship Dialogues with Ascending Leaders. Ready for transformation in your church? We're here to help you get measurable results and eternal outcomes. Join us as we uncover the vital, often missed concepts that will help you build a vibrant, Christ-centered discipleship culture. Welcome to our dialogue today. I am Mike Johnson, founder of Ascending Leaders, and we are about empowering churches for Christ-centered discipleship, measurable results, eternal outcomes. And with me today is Reverend Bob Johnson. He's a retired Methodist pastor, and he has years of experience in small country church, as well as almost 20 years experience in a Houston megachurch as executive pastor.
Right, that's right.
Welcome, Bob.
Thanks, Mike. Great to be here, and I love this topic.
Well, yeah, this is a topic that is kind of our ultimate. It is building a disciple path across the congregation to help people move.
Right.
And often when churches talk to us, that's the first thing they want. How do I build a discipleship pathway?
Right.
And yet we find if you just go out and build one right away and put it on your website, it often doesn't go any further than your website. Talk to us about that, and talk to us about why it's important to have all these other discipleship dialogues.
Right. Well, you're right. You can go on the web and surf church websites, and you can see a lot of really pretty graphics describing the church's disciple path or discipleship pathway, whatever they want to call it. Just from the web, you can't always tell whether they've done the homework. The homework is being clear as a church on what the definition at your church of a disciple is. In the United Methodist Church, for example, our mission statement is to make disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world. Well, make disciples, right? How do you know if you've made one unless you know what one looks like or what one is? If Ford Motor Company is building F-150 pickup trucks, how are they going to build one if they don't know what it looks like? Mm-hmm. So before you can design a discipleship pathway, you have to know where you're trying to take people. You have to know what a disciple is. And that's hard. It really sounds easy. It's really hard when you start to do it. But when you're done, you've laid the groundwork among all the people that work to make that happen. It's really worth doing.
Yeah, and we actually have another discipleship dialogue about that, spending the whole time just digging into how do you define disciple, and people can find that on YouTube or Vimeo, our channels there.
Yeah, Ascending Leaders has a booklet. I have one here called, I'll get it, 10 Steps Toward a Clear Disciple Path, and one of the 10 steps is to define a disciple, so that when you're defining your disciple path, you know where it is you're trying to take people, what you're trying to make.
Very important, very important. So tell us about a disciple path. What is it, and why is it so important?
So if you think about you're going on vacation, you and your family are going on vacation, and now let's just say you're going to go to Disney World, and you get in the car and you're heading to Disney World, and you program your Google Maps or your Apple Maps or your Waze or whatever. That software is useless to you unless you know where you're going. But once you know where you're going, we're going to Disney World, the map tells you how to get there. And that's what a disciple path is. It is a map, best thought of as a map, that helps you get from where you are to where you want people to be. We have a definition of a disciple, someone who loves the Lord, the God, with all their heart, mind, soul, and strength, and their neighbor as themselves. Now, how do we get people there? And it's very local to that particular church, because the way that church does ministry, the ministries that it offers and so forth is unique to that church. So what works as a disciple path at your church probably won't work at my church, because we're different. We have the same goal, but how we get there is going to be different.
And some churches, basically what they do is they take all their ministries and try to put them on the map across the 4 stages, which another dialogue talks about of a disciple's growth. And now, if you're a small church, you maybe can do that. If you're a large church, it's a huge map. So what's the problem with that?
Yeah, so, one problem, I can think of several problems. One problem is you don't even know where to start. You just get overwhelmed from the get-go, especially if you're at a large church with a lot of ministries. But the second problem is You talked about Ascending Leaders works with a 4-stage model that we begin with the assumption that the journey to become a disciple of Jesus Christ, a mature disciple of Jesus Christ, it doesn't happen overnight. You don't just hear one sermon or read one book and boom, you're fully mature. I'm suppose it's possible God can do anything, but 99.99% of people that are on the road to discipleship, it's a journey. You get there in stages, and nothing magical about 4. We talk about 4 invitations from Jesus that represented at each of the stages, but we work with 4 stages to go from sort of brand new in the faith to a mature disciple. And the discipleship pathway is what do we offer at our church to get people from stage 1 all the way to stage 4, the mature discipleship. And here's something really interesting that the analytical tool that we use to help people get measurable results has discovered that what works to move people from stage 1 to stage 2 isn't the same thing as what moves people from stage 3 to stage 4. In a lot of churches, we just operate under the assumption that we will just throw all this out there and people can kind of self-select, what they want to take. But what works to move you at the early stages, when people are actually more dependent on the church to tell them what to do to grow, is not the same as what moves people at the more mature stages from, say, 3 to 4. When people aren't necessarily looking to the church to tell them what to do or what to offer, what they need, but rather help me connect more closely to God. So if you just throw everything up there, it's way, way harder to discern the difference between the early stages and the later stages.
And that's a really important point because, the point is that people have different discipleship needs based on their stage.
Right.
So if you and I are in very different stages,
right,
and I say, hey, our church really needs this, I need this for my spiritual growth, and you say,
right,
no, we really need this.
Right.
Both of you are right.
Right.
Because you're at different stages.
Right.
Both are needed.
Right. And again, a lot of churches, I think, are really good at offering programs, and programs work really well to help people move from stage 1 to 2 and even maybe 2 to 3, or at least to start that journey. But they work less well for people that are in stage 3 trying to move to stage 4. And where we see this happen is when we offer Bible studies that lose sight of the fact that people need different things at different stages. So we offer a Bible study. Most of the time, it's geared toward the stage 2 to stage 3 people. The people that are at stage 1, they're lost. Mm-hmm. They don't even know what books are in the Bible. They don't know the history of Israel. They don't know, and so they feel stupid. They feel like everybody in here knows all this except me. Mm-hmm. If you go the other way and you try to gear it towards people that are at stage 1, stage 2, the stage 3 and stage 4 people feel like, well, there's nothing here for me. I need help with discernment, and I'm not. So you have to, in your discipleship pathway, make sure you're offering Bible studies that are going to speak to the full range of people on the stages.
It sounds kind of complicated, and yet it needs to be clear and simple. What would you recommend as first steps for a church to build a disciple path that, even though it's dealing with so many different factors, make something simple that your average Joe and Jane can understand?
Right. Before I answer that question, let me just make one other important point here. Discipleship pathways or disciple paths are designed for the disciple, not the church. It's not for the church to feel good about itself, and it's not for the church to make a logo and put on the website, look what a all-encompassing church we are. It's to help the person in the pew to figure out what their next step is. It's to help them figure out where in the stages am I right now. We're on this journey to discipleship. Where am I? And knowing that, then I can know what's my next step. I don't need to know all the steps right now. Help me figure out my next step. So that's one way of keeping it simple. You're talking about helping people determine their next step. But another way that these can be simple and it's helpful, Mike, imagine for a second you're out in the woods and you're going for a hike. It's a nice, hot summer day, beautiful. You're in the woods and you've been hiking for a while and you come across a stream. And the stream has in it rocks of several sizes. And your job is to get across the stream. What's the most likely route you're going to take to get across the stream? You got big rocks and boulders. You got some smaller ones. The stream bed has got a lot of pebbles in it. What are you probably going to walk on to get across the stream?
Yeah, my wife and I just had this experience during our summer. We were in Moab, Utah, and we were walking across the stream, along the stream, and crossed it several times. And there were different sized rocks. Mm-hmm. And we started by stepping on the big boulders.
Right.
And later, as we were getting hot, we actually had water shoes on. We just tramped through the water on the pebbles.
Yep. That's right. And especially if it's a hot day, you're going to enjoy cooling your feet off a little bit. But if you're wearing shoes that you don't want to get wet, then you're probably going to try to find the big rocks, the ones that are above the water, and step across those. So if you think about being on this side of the stream as stage 1 and the other side of the stream as stage 4, and your job is to get there, you're going to probably step on the boulders. But there are rocks of other sizes. There are rocks and there are pebbles. Come back to that in a second. One way of beginning your development of a discipleship pathway as a church, once you have clearly established what it is you're trying to make and when you're making disciples, what are the boulders in your church? What are the ministries that have proven the most effective in moving people across that stream, of getting people from one stage to the next? There's a caveat here, because the most effective ministry is not always the largest ministry. And there may be some large ministries that aren't very effective in moving people. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the ministry. It's just when we talk about disciple making, we're talking about moving people from where they are to the next stage. So what are your ministries that are most effective in moving people from one stage to another? And calling those boulders. And so that initially your discipleship pathway is, if you could visualize the 4 stages that we've talked about in the disciples' journey, what are the boulders that help people move from stage 1 to stage 2? What are the boulders? So, for example, it could be things like small group ministries or worship services or whatever it is. This is where it gets very local. What are the boulders most effective in getting people from stage 2 to stage 3? A lot of people in my tradition and the Methodist tradition find that the walk to Emmaus. They send people on the walk to Emmaus. They come back changed. Not everybody, but a lot of people. It's very effective. That's a boulder for some churches. What is effective in moving people from 3 to 4? This is where a lot of churches get in trouble. It's really, they know how to program. But moving from 3 to 4 is not so much about program. And this is where people can sometimes struggle. But what are the most effective things that you're offering? It may not be a program. It may be an experience or an opportunity that you're inviting people into. But it's part of your discipleship pathway as a boulder because it's effective when it's used. Then you've got ministries that are not ineffective, but maybe less effective. Maybe they appeal to a smaller group of people. And we call those rocks. They're important. We're not talking about getting rid of them, but we understand that when it comes to helping people move across, they're not quite as effective. And then we got pebbles. Pebbles, again, nothing wrong with a pebble ministry. It's just that maybe it's a very niche ministry. It serves a very particular purpose. Maybe it helps with fellowship, but doesn't necessarily move a lot of people. So the discipleship pathway then considers boulders, rocks, and pebbles within each of the moving people from one stage to another.
I can hear it now. Somebody says, well, wait a minute. You've got that ministry as a boulder, and my bunco club is a pebble. Aren't you playing favorites with ministries?
Yeah. Well, that's easy to think if you are thinking about the size of the rock, meaning the importance of the ministry. And it's not. There's a difference between effectiveness and importance. So you can have an important ministry that is a pebble, but it's a pebble because it's reaching a small group of people. I'm really going out on the limb here, but I know a couple of churches that I've served that have very important knitting ministries. People make prayer blankets. They make things for the local infants at the local hospital. It maybe involves 5 to 10 people. What they're doing is great ministry. The people that receive those things or value them highly, but you're not moving a whole lot of people along the discipleship pathway when you just have 5, 10, 15 people. So maybe we call that a pebble. It's not a statement of its importance. It's a statement of its effectiveness in moving large numbers of people. And again, when a boulder is the place to start. It's not necessarily the all-encompassing disciple pathway.
I can see that. That's really, I think, an important point, that it's not about how important it is, just how effective it is at moving people. Another one I can think of is like a grief share ministry. Very effective, I'm sure, moving people.
Right, but it's a niche for a certain group of people,
niche to
not
very
intended
small
for
group.
everybody, at least at this moment in time.
Yep. So you don't put in front of people, hey, if you want to go to the next stage, you've got to do grief share. Well,
Right.
You don't walk into grief share
Right.
Unless you're forced into it because of your life
Right.
situation.
It's very important to you if you're in that stage of life.
Yeah, and very helpful. So, but I'm not going to give up on this
Uh-oh.
because I know
A dog with a
lot
bone.
of leaders that are going to say that, you know. But what about mine? What about my ministry? Why can't we just put all of them up there? Just, big menu, like walking
Yeah.
into a deli with this huge menu in front of us across
I'll tell you.
the wall.
I'll tell you a personal story. It involved that church in Houston, a large church in Houston where I served, and it was a large church, over 5,000 members, had a lot of ministries, and people with that. We did. This was before we were working with Discipleship Pathway, but I can see exactly that argument happening. But we decided to make a booklet that was a catalog of all of our ministries, and one Sunday of the year we were focused on the stewardship of service, and we gave out this, I say booklet, it was more like a phone book. Remember phone books?
Yes.
And here's what happened. It made the staff feel good, and the people, the lay people that were involved in ministries, because every ministry was in there. People that received it didn't know where to start. It was so overwhelming. It was useless because they didn't know where to start. There was no way to help them identify where they were on the discipleship journey. There was no way to help them figure out which of those ministries in the phone book were what they needed to grow to the next stage. It was overwhelming. And so, again, discipleship pathway is not about the church. It's not about making the church feel good. It's about helping the person grow in their discipleship. And if you list everything, it's not going to help them.
Good. Yeah, that is critical. That I think that point that you're making, that ultimately it's about the people.
Right.
And it's interesting how so often we create new programs for needs and for the people, but quite soon the purpose becomes keeping this program going, getting enough people into it, and
Right.
we forget that maybe if there's not the people, it's time to sunset this program and
Right.
to highlight another one that's more effective at moving disciples forward.
Right.
You talked about that huge catalog. I've heard the term decision paralysis.
Yes.
Talk to us a little bit about that. What is that?
Well, it's that's that old story, but you go to the grocery store to buy a box of cereal, and there's 50 different kinds of cereal on the shelf, and you're paralyzed. You don't even know where to start. And grocery stores have discovered that if they just offer 5 instead of 50, they sell more because it helps people get past the decision paralysis.
So we're actually, if we have everything out there, even if everything is very effective, people were just gonna basically shut down and not make a decision because of that.
Right.
So
You got to make it simple for the person in the pew to know, or give them a way to know, what's my next step.
Okay. So give us a hypothetical example. What might this look like in a church to have a really good disciple path?
So the ones that I've helped design, although the churches have been very creative in the way they depicted these, they're all based around, they start with the 4 stages.
Okay.
And you ask yourself, at our church, what is the most effective way of helping a person move from stage 1 to stage 2? And then from stage 2 to stage 3. You may think of it in categories like, okay, let's think of the category of fellowship. What fellowship opportunities do we have that are very effective in helping people that are, new to discipleship to move to that more mature stage of discipleship? And then you're going to move them from 2 to 3. It's all about movement. You don't want anybody getting stuck, and that, unfortunately, a lot of people do get stuck. The data tells us that second stage, stage 2, has more people in it than any other stage, and this is true of every church. That means people are backing up. They're getting stuck. 4 tends to be even the smallest yet, so it's all about movement. So how do we get people that now we've got them to stage 2 in the area of fellowship? This might be our Sunday school classes, our small groups. You can even have large fellowship opportunities. But now, as you're moving towards the more mature end, the stage 3s, the stage 4s, you want those fellowship groups to get smaller and smaller so that the people can get more intimate and more open about what's really going on in their life. So you may have a large group fellowship opportunity at the beginning, and it winnows down to smaller groups, maybe even knee groups, 2 or 3 people that are really going deeper and deeper. Next category might be Bible studies. And so you have a Bible study that's designed for somebody who knows nothing about the Bible, and they feel comfortable when they come to that. But you've got to go all the way to, now what about people that are at stage 4? They know all the basic stuff, but they want to hear from the Lord as they read the Bible. How do we help them do that? Maybe we teach them methods of centering prayer, or Lectio Divina, or some of these other ways that they can hear. But in churches, we tend to leave out the 3s and 4s. We kind of focus on the 1s and 2s. So you can do that with every category: fellowship, Bible study, worship, and just make sure you're offering something for every stage at each of those categories.
All right. And before you were discipleship coach with Ascending Leaders, in fact, I'm not even sure if I've told you this, long before you were discipleship coach, in the first 10 years of Ascending Leaders, I was in a few meetings where there was this executive pastor of this mega church that was there, and I thought, wow, he must have quite the influence. And then in 2018, when you reached out to me, I thought, hey, that's that executive pastor. And then, I actually became a client of Ascending Leaders.
Right, we were a client first,
We were a client first. And
I was so impressed by the way it worked that I said, hey, can I help?
And you were, and before you got to that, as a client, you were very good at building a disciple path. And not all churches, really have somebody who gets it like you did, and that's why I'm so glad you're a discipleship coach, because you really got it fast. But what did you have any discoveries, any surprises as you worked with this exceedingly large church, trying to build for them a simple disciple path? Tell us more.
Well, I've already described one failure, which was when we produced the phone book catalog. I learned the importance of simplicity then, and again, there was a part of us that designed that thing that were just so proud that we were part of a church that offered so much that it didn't even occur to us that we're going to overwhelm people. But that was one learning. This next one actually occurred when we became a client of Ascending Leaders, and we were getting ready for the testing instrument, which in those days was called the Reveal Survey. Now we have some other options, but so I gathered all of the people on staff at this church that were involved in discipleship: children's ministry, youth ministry, adult ministry, and so on. And there was about 10 of us in the room. And together we had over 100 years of experience in that church. And I asked them to try to predict what the results were going to be in certain areas of discipleship that it measured. And I actually made them come up on the board. And I did this too. I didn't just make them do it too. I did it too. And we indicated where we thought this particular marker was going to come out. Every one of us was wrong, including me. And so if you think you know a church because you've been here long enough and you know the people, I just know that church, I don't need any testing instrument. I have a gut feel for where it is. Well, we did too, and we were all wrong. So if you think you know what's wrong and you start working on what you think is wrong or what the church needs or what people need, and you're wrong about that, you haven't helped at all. So that was the second thing I learned. You've got to, and of course the engineer in me loved that part. You got to have real data. You got to have real evidence if you're going to make real change. But the fact that people with over 100 years of experience got it wrong, that was unexpected.
Well, and you all had the humility to admit that and to change course. I mean, you could have just said, well, setting leaders doesn't know what they're doing, and we're going to march forward with what we know. In fact, most churches, we do that church-wide discipleship assessment. And that thing that you started, we actually have a lot of churches do. We say, oh, where do you think you're going to be?
Yeah.
And many of them, when they get their actual results, it's like, whoa.
Well, that was the third thing that was quite unexpected. We knew we had room for improvement, but we thought we were pretty good at this discipleship stuff. Well, when we got our results back, well, you remember, you had to talk me off the ledge.
Yeah.
Because it was bad.
Yeah, it was bad.
It was bad. And I had, I kept picturing having to go to our board and explain the score that we got. But, hey, it told us something important. This is where you're starting from.
Yep.
And how are you going to get to the next place, church? And that's what the sending leaders did and walked with us. And one of the things we learned was how to make a discipleship pathway. This book, this little booklet, 10 Steps to a Disciple Path, was really, really helpful. Probably couldn't have done it just with that book. The coaching was essential. But the second time we repeated that test 2 years later, big improvement.
Big improvement, yeah.
And now we had data that said and could show where we improved. And part of it was constructing a disciple pathway and took account of people at all of the stages.
Yeah. No, that's great we do that. In fact, I think I remember that your results of that first assessment was troubled, which was not what you want to report.
Right.
And then we looked at the numbers closer and we said, well, there's some subtle things going on here. You're kind of halfway towards the next stage.
Well, actually, it was we were having a phone consult with the people that were behind that created the survey, and their category for what we were was troubled. And I'm thinking, I can't stand in front of our board and tell them which shit we were troubled. But anyway, after we described to her some of the things that were going on, she said, well, you don't sound so much troubled as complacent. And that sounded like good news. Oh, yay, we're complacent.
Oh, man.
But anyway, we got better.
Yeah.
And we wouldn't have got better if we didn't have that data.
Yeah. Now, we've been talking about big churches, and you've had a lot of experience in a mammoth church. But you've also had experience in small churches.
Yes.
And you've coached some rural churches.
Yes.
Tell us what this might look like.
It's actually a lot easier in a smaller church because you're not dealing with as much complexity.
Okay.
And the disciple path, the guts of it are the same. Identify your boulders, your rocks, and your pebbles. You have the 4 stages. It really helps if you can do the survey and understand how many people are at each stage. And most churches, small or large or whatever, will discover lots of people at stage 2, not so many at stage 3 and 4. And you're asking yourself the same question. So how do we help our 2s move to a 3 and help our 3s move to a 4? Because it's a smaller church, you maybe only have 1 or 2 options at each stage, but that's okay. You're focusing in on helping the people move from stage to stage. So the principles are exactly the same. It's just that you're not tempted to produce a phone book like we did at the big church.
Yeah, but you can do it.
You can do it, and very effectively do it.
Yep. So it's not like, well, our church is too small. You were talking about those mega churches, and ours just can't do that. No, you can do it with small churches.
And we, at Ascending Leaders, we have as much data, and probably more data with small churches, working with small churches. What did you tell me? Something like 80% of all churches are under 100 people?
In the United States.
Yeah.
80, I think it's 75, 80%.
Right, so consequently, a lot of our client churches are small, too.
Yeah.
But we have the same data that says you work on this, and your second round will be better.
Yeah.
And your third round will be better yet.
And that's really key is some churches just make a little bit of progress. Maybe they build this path, put it on their website, and they do nothing more with it, and then you don't make the kind of progress, but you got to keep working on it.
One of the things that you told us when you first came to consult with us is that this is a marathon, not a sprint. It's not a program. People think of a program as something you can just offer. It's like a one and done. Nope. This is, if you're going to focus on discipleship, this is your focus for the next 1, 3, 5, 10 years.
They say it takes 7+ years to change a culture of a church, and we're talking here about culture change.
Right. It's like turning a battleship.
Yep.
No matter how big your church is.
Yes. And
sometimes the smaller churches are bigger battleships.
Well, but they also sometimes can turn faster than very big churches. It's just each church is different, unique. Over the years, I've often watched church websites, and they'll say on their website, Discipleship Pathway or Disciple Path, and I look at what they are. But if you look closely at them, many, not all, but many are really not disciple paths. Remember, disciple paths are about moving a person from one stage of disciple to the next stage.
Right.
But they're more like assimilation paths or an assimilation plan.
Yeah.
They're about moving the person more towards the center of the church.
Yeah.
Assimilating them into the life of the church. How are those two different? And why is it so important to focus on disciple path?
So assimilation, this is kind of ironic. When I first came to that large church in Houston that we've been talking about, my first position there, my title was pastor of assimilation. And my job was to get new people involved in the church. And I was considered successful if a higher percentage of our new members were involved in a Sunday school class or got involved in a ministry and had record of attendance at worship and so forth. Nowhere in those early days was there any focus on, but do they love Jesus more? Do they love their neighbor more? Assimilation is getting people busy in the church. Discipleship is getting people closer to Jesus. It's interesting that the people that did this study that we use as our testing instrument they designed the survey starting with the assumption that the more you can get people active in the church, the more they will grow in their discipleship. And most pastors still think that way. If I can just get so-and-so into active in whatever, the more I can get them active, the more they'll grow. And it turns out that's not what helps people grow. They're busy, but they're not accomplishing discipleship. So assimilation and discipleship are two very different things. Assimilation is moving people into membership. Discipleship is helping people move closer to Jesus, to love God more, to love their neighbor more. What works for one doesn't always work for the other.
Yeah. And one simple way to see that is activity does not equal intimacy.
Right.
So you can get people busier, but you're
Say
not
that again.
growing them.
That's important.
Activity does not equal intimacy.
Does not equal intimacy.
Be
right.
busy, but not very close to Jesus.
Right. Right.
And we're talking about getting people closer to Jesus.
Right.
And better loving others.
Right.
So.
And a key part of discipleship is also what you do outside the church, how you live your life outside the church.
Sure. So
Assimilation has no focus on that.
That's true. That's another point.
It's all about getting them into the church, deeper into the church.
Well, Bob, thank you for being with us today.
My pleasure.
And thank you for this conversation, this dialogue about having a disciple path in a congregation and how helpful it is, how really important it is. And it's as you said, it's about strip everything else away. And it's not about the programs, but it's about moving these people forward. And
right.
Even if you have a fancy one that doesn't move people forward, it's not fulfilling its purpose.
It's not about the church. It's about the person moving.
Yeah. Thank you for being with us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And thank you to everyone who joined us for this discipleship dialogue. Let's not just talk about discipleship. Let's do something. Let's make a difference. Go to ascendingleaders.org to see how ascending leaders and our discipleship coaches like Bob can help you change things. And also, don't just say, well, we'll get to it someday. But make that today. Take one small step towards building a discipleship culture in your church. It's critical for the future of your ministry.